The seminar you're going to go through right now is about the test that takes place at the University of Alberta. And this test is used to assess physical aptitude, right, or fitness that's specific to firefighting. It takes place sort of midway in the process after you do the aptitude test, right? People are moved along to the fitness test. And then after this would come the interview. So we're not, I'm not an employee of Edmonton Fire or the City of Edmonton. I work at the U of A, but we have a very good partnership. We've done this for decades, right, where the U of A assesses this portion of the recruitment. So our test takes place at the University of Alberta. This is the Butterdome, okay, which is on the corner of 114th Street and 87th Avenue. When you come to do our test, or if you come to see our test, it's right through here and then through the doors, and it takes place on what's called the concourse of the Butterdome, which is the big cement floor where they sell popcorn and hamburgers, okay, when there's an event. Our lab is directly above that. So if I say upstairs or concourse, that's what I'm talking about. Upstairs is our lab where the treadmill test is. Downstairs is the concourse where we do our job-related tests. So our testing is broken into those two portions, okay? And they're meant to simulate the physical demands of firefighting. Every test that we do has a pass-fail criteria, and to pass overall on the day, you have to pass all of the tests. Okay? The pass-fail criteria is the minimally acceptable amount of physical fitness for firefighting. Okay? And a lot of work goes into getting those standards right. So the treadmill test always happens first, okay? And that takes place in the lab. And then the 6 job-related tests always happen after that, and they take place on the concourse. In between, there's always 60 minutes, exactly 60 minutes of transition. So one of the most obvious demands of firefighting is that you're wearing protective clothing almost all the time when you're doing the job. So our test requires you to do the same thing. So whenever you're doing the treadmill test or any of the job-related tests, this is how you're dressed. We supply all of that equipment except for running shoes, okay, which you have to bring. Okay, so when you come in, you're properly fitted with equipment that you'll be wearing for the whole day. You'll notice a couple other things. During the treadmill test, we measure your oxygen consumption. Your pass-fail criteria is not based on your oxygen consumption. Okay, but during the test, we tell you to go to maximum, go as long as possible. And that allows us to measure your peak oxygen consumption, which is a really good marker of fitness. So that's another piece of information you get at the end of the day. Okay, and it's a piece of information Edmonton can look at. Otherwise, the pass-fail is based on you doing a certain amount of work, and I'll go into more detail about that in a couple slides. During the job-related test, you're wearing almost the same equipment, but you wear a safety harness because at one test, you're climbing up and down a ladder. And you wear fire protective boots. Okay, even though that they're $350 boots, they still fit like rubber boots. So bring extra socks. I'll say it again later on, but bring extra socks to get that as good a fit as possible on the boots. If you're trying to duplicate this, obviously like turnout gear is expensive and you don't have that, but you can duplicate the load really easily. Okay, you're looking at about 22 to 24 kilograms. So if you want to experience a bit of what that's like, get a backpack, put about 50 pounds in it, 55 pounds in it of stuff. Doesn't matter what, and then put it on, walk around, go up and down some stairs, right? Hike up and down the river valley, see how that feels. And then do it all again wearing a sweatsuit or wearing coveralls. And you'll get an idea about the heat stress. This does not make you hot enough that you're in distress, but you're going to feel hot because of the clothing. So it's important that you experience that beforehand. I wouldn't say you want to experience it during every single training session you do, but you want to have an idea what that's like. So my first part of the presentation is just going to go through the videos. I want you to see these tests, and then I'm going to walk you through what your day is actually like, and I'll answer questions along the way. So you're going to see that the treadmill test here, the pass-fail criteria, the minimally acceptable time is 13 minutes. So that's a combination of 5 minutes with gradual increases, what we call our warm-up. So you see here you're at no grade, then a little bit of grade, okay? In a minute, you'll see it goes up to a 10% grade. So that's the second phase. That's 8 minutes long, and you have to complete that amount of work. So 5 plus 8 is the minimum, 13 minutes. But we don't just want you to do the minimum, okay? We want to assess you on your peak or your maximum. So after that, the test gets gradually harder. Every minute, you'll see a grade increase, and then every minute, you'll see a speed increase until you cannot go any longer. So we're going to watch the video to the end, but you'll notice that while you're sort of cruising, we're going to ask you other questions. We're going to measure your heart rate. We're going to see how you're doing those don't affect your scores, but be honest with us when you're doing the testing so that we know how hard you're working. When you're absolutely done, in a second here, you'll see the grade gets to a maximum, and they'll tap the bar, which is a warning. Okay, if you're doing the test, you give the tester a warning saying, I've got about 30 seconds left. Okay, you can still go as long as possible, but it's a good way to communicate. And then you grab the bar with both hands when you're actually done. Otherwise, you don't touch the bars. They're not there to help you. They're there for safety. Okay, if you stumble and steady yourself and keep walking and you're in control, there's no problem. But if you're cheating, we will end the test. The only other time we would end the test is if you're doing something unsafe. So for example, you'll see here in a second, he'll drift back, right? So there he's drifting back a bit. We'll say move up. There's a little correction. If you cannot make those corrections and you get to the back of the treadmill, we'll stop the test because we don't want you to fall over. Same thing if you're doubled over like this, all right? The speed is relatively consistent, okay, until you get to 18 minutes, so quite a ways in. So 3.5 miles per hour. It's a brisk walk. But you can jog or run at any time if you want, as long as you're in control, right? As long as you're in control, that's fine. So, any quick questions about that one? There's one other portion that I didn't show, which is the cool down. It does not count towards your total time, but you must complete it. It's 5 minutes of slow walking. And that's to transition you from a maximal effort till you're a human being again, and then you can get off, okay? Because sometimes it gets a bit ugly at the end. In a good way, good kind of ugly. So now there's exactly 60 minutes between that and when you go downstairs, and you actually do a warm-up or a practice session at each station. You get about 5 minutes to do all of these activities before you actually get timed. All right? You're not wearing the full gear when you do that warm-up, all right? But you're still able to do the task so you know what it's like, right? When you actually are doing the test, you stay encapsulated, so you stay wearing all that clothing for the whole time. This is always the first test. It's walking, lifting, carrying, and holding. Walking, lifting, carrying, and holding. It's not a memory test, so there's a tester right beside you telling you what to do, giving you an instruction about what's next. Okay? The order is the same for everyone. It's always done in the same way, and it has to be done safely, but you need to move with a sense of purpose. Those are the exact words that firefighters gave us when we validated this test, right? We didn't just make this up, okay? A lot of work goes into building these tests. And one thing that the feedback we got was that for this to be valid, for it to actually represent the fitness that firefighters have on the job, you have to move with a sense of purpose. So it's a quick walk. Not so fast you're falling over. Now, the holds are sort of their own little test inside the test. They're each timed. So every hold is 30 seconds long. And you have to stay in contact with those little discs for the whole 30 seconds. And you can't lean against yourself or lean against the side. It's a freestanding hold. This tool weighs 20 kilograms. So that's like 45 pounds. Really easy to simulate in a gym environment. That's how heavy one of those bars is, right? So 30-second holds at 3 different heights sort of simulates popping a door off a car. That's the most exact simulation that this is based on. But it does say that you have the strength to hold any tool repeatedly for several efforts. So after exactly 3 minutes, you move on and you complete the hose drag. Okay, so exactly 3 minutes. Now, this task is unique because it gets heavier the further you go, but that's exactly like what firefighters do when they drag a hose, right? If it has water in it, it gets heavier the further you drag it. Even if it's empty, it does. So that's meant to simulate not just dragging hose specifically, but any kind of forward dragging motion. It could be upstairs in real life, it could be up a ladder in real life, or it could be on a smooth concrete floor. But for testing purposes, this is as close as we get. So I'll show it one more time. You have to keep 2 hands securely on the hose, and you cannot run at any time during any of these tests. So what you're seeing here is about the fastest we would let you go, as long as 1 foot is on the ground at all times. At the end, you need to get low, you need to dig in and push, and it is helpful, okay, to practice the hardest part of the test, not the easiest part of the test. So if you have a choice and you want to push a sled, or you want to practice dragging something, drag something that's really heavy, not something that's really light and fast. Okay. So after exactly 3 minutes, okay, you do the next task, which is more focused around your upper body strength and endurance. So again, you're pulling this weighted sled with a piece of rope on a smooth concrete floor. Okay, you have to complete 3 pulls, and in between, you'll see here, you have to walk. So the video you're watching right now is about 75 seconds long, and you have 90 maximum of, sorry, what's this one? 110 seconds to complete it for the minimum. Okay, so this is a nice steady pace that gets things done. You can go a bit faster than this, and you can go slower than this, and you'd still pass. You notice the hand over hand technique. You're dealing with friction, right? So it's different than like sitting in a gym and pulling on a machine or lifting a dumbbell, where you're initially, when you pull, you have to overcome a certain amount of friction. So it takes, let's say it's 45 pounds of pressure to pull, but once it's moving, it's less than that. So using and practicing a hand over hand technique will allow that sled to keep sliding, which is just going to be easier. If you stop and go and stop and go and stop and go, you're going to have to work a lot harder to complete the task. You're allowed to use a two-handed technique, so you saw the finish there, right? Grab the rope with both hands and pull. That's fine, right? Every once in a while your hands start to slip or something goes wrong. I've done the entire task like this, just to see, and it was fine, right? And that way grip strength wasn't as big a deal. But you do have to practice that if you expect to do well, okay? Not to pass, but to do really well. You got to practice these things. The other thing here you'll notice is that the walking speed was very controlled. You're allowed to walk faster than what you saw in that video, but it can't be a run. It has to be a walk. So this is the shortest of the tasks. You have 19 seconds to complete it. What you're seeing here is about 8 to 12 second effort, which is typical of what we see. And when you're done, you can't hear it, but there's a loud buzzer, a light goes off, and the time stops. Okay. So let me show it again. The hammer always starts in the same location. Okay, you have to grab it at the level of the duct tape, so your hand can't get any further up towards the heavy end of the hammer. That's for safety, because we don't want your hand hitting this, okay, if you miss. And otherwise, it's mostly just a matter of hanging on tight and hitting hard. So 2 tasks remain. So again, exactly 3 minutes, and then you walk up and you do a backwards dragging task. In this case, you're dragging a simulated victim. So we call it the victim rescue test. And the victim weighs 84 kilograms. Okay? This is to simulate the median weight of a Canadian, and then we put the clothing on. All right? The steering portion is important. You have to stay in control of this test at all times. You cannot hit the cones. Okay? You must avoid the cones. So we'll always tell you, look over your shoulder, we'll give you feedback. You can't see a tester in this, but there'd be a tester right beside you saying, look over your left shoulder, find the cone, make the turn. So they'll walk you through it, but they won't move you out of the way of the obstacle. So the final task is the ladder climb. By now, you're pretty hot and uncomfortable. Okay, so again, it's important to listen to the instructions that we're giving you. The instructions for this test are that you have to go up and down 5 times to the 10th rung. And you have to put 2 feet at the top and 2 feet at the bottom. So watch carefully here, 1 foot, 2 feet, and then back down. What you're seeing here is probably 75 or 80 seconds, okay, to complete. And you have 97 seconds to complete. So you have just over a minute and a half to do it. This would be like, a nice, steady, quick pace. I've seen faster and I've seen slower.
Is that 10th rung marked?
It is, yeah. It's marked by the tie-down strap. And also the tester is standing right here during the test and calling it out. Okay. So it'll be 9, 10, up, then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 9, 10, down. And down means both feet. Okay. If you want to practice this, oh, sorry, go ahead, question.
Oh, okay. They're not monitoring air consumption or anything there. I see they've got the BA on.
So that's a really good question. You're wearing a BA to simulate the load, but you're not on air at any time during these tests. And that's coming back to that spectrum. Where that's like in training and stuff, you're expected to know what that's like. But for this, some of you are not firefighters, you're in your 1001s, you might come along to this stage and you've never been on air before. We don't want this to be the first time you're on air and then say climb up and down a ladder. That's part of something that's taken out of a test. Now, if you're going to simulate this, I have a couple suggestions. The first one is don't set up a ladder and try to climb up and down 10 rungs because you don't have fall protection. I don't want anyone to watch this and go get hurt. you can simulate everything you need to simulate by climbing up and down 3 or 4 rungs of a ladder, okay, if you really want to practice it. Or really, a long staircase is pretty similar to the demands of this test. Because a ladder climb isn't meant to simulate exactly climbing a ladder. It's meant to simulate climbing that firefighters have to do. Okay? So the equipment, the load is important, and then a climbing task. So stairs 2 at a time, or a ladder, you could practice going up and down just 3 or 4 rungs. And you get to practice changing direction more often, which is probably advantageous for like eye-hand coordination. So those are all the videos. Okay? Let me check the time. Good. Okay. So here's what your day would actually look like. You schedule to show up at a certain time and show up on time. All right? If you show up 15 minutes early, that's even better. We'll do a check-in procedure where you have to complete some paperwork. The most important things that you have to bring with you are a medical clearance form. That has to be printed, downloaded, and completed by a medical doctor before you come in, okay, like a physician, an MD. It's not like a really long, complicated form. It's just a description of the task, and then the doctor has to say, can this person who's in front of me right now actually do that safely? All right? The other thing you have to bring with you when you get to that stage, the city will tell you, is that you have to bring your money order, your payment. Okay? Then you'll be taken to like the locker room. We'll fit you with the gear that I showed you at the very start. And that takes about 30 minutes. And you move on to the treadmill test. The test is explained to you, and you have a chance to ask questions. Okay, explained out loud. And then you start the test, and you complete it. Go as long as possible. Okay? Walk as long as possible. That's the simplest instructions for that test I can give you. Jog if you need to, right? When you're absolutely done, grab the bar with 2 hands. After the 5-minute cool down, okay, you have exactly 60 minutes, okay, exactly 60 minutes before you begin the next portion of our test downstairs. So again, exactly 60 minutes. Don't eat anything strange, but rehydrate. So this 1 or 2 of these is is the recommendation, and it's good to practice that. But don't show up on the day of the test and try to chug some Red Bulls in between tests. And I say that bluntly because if people try it, we stop them. It's not good for you. Practice what you're going to do before you get there, including things like hydration and snacking. You've seen these tests now, so that kind of makes sense to you. You do this warm up, again, about 5 minutes at each of the 6 stations. You must do that. You must do it. Okay, you have to demonstrate that the intensity that you're going to give, and you have to get feedback from the testers about following the rules. Now you're timed. Again, all of these tests have a pass-fail component, and you have to do them all, and in between each one, there's exactly 3 minutes break. After the ladder climb, there's 3 minutes before we let you go, because we need to make sure that you're kind of not just going from maximum to nothing. During those 3-minute breaks, we're always going to give you instructions to keep moving. So please practice that before you come. You can't just go sit in a chair in the corner between tasks. You have to keep moving. Not like running or sprinting, but moving around. So to recap the tests, the first one, again, you're carrying, lifting, carrying, and holding. And you have 225 seconds. That's 3 minutes, 45 seconds to complete it. The second task is the hose drag. You have 27 seconds to complete it. Okay, the video you watched was about 20 seconds long. For the weighted sled pull, you have 110 seconds to complete it. Again, the shortest task, you have 19 seconds to complete this one. And then the victim rescue, you have 57 seconds to complete this task, okay, minimum. And then the ladder climb, we have 97 seconds to complete it. So the final bit of the day is just that you do a sign out and a report card is given to you. The report card will then tell you whether you passed or failed all the tasks. Okay? Your actual official results with Edmonton are sent directly to Edmonton. Okay, so you don't have to do anything with your report card. The results are recorded and passed along. Otherwise, we need to see that your heart rate and your blood pressure return to normal, all right, before you leave. So that's just 100 beats per minute. Going back to just some basic things to be prepared for. It's going to be about 3.5 to 4 hours. So don't plan to be there for 2 hours and then say I have to go, because that will and your day. All right, you need to set aside some time to do this. Secondly, we supply all of the clothing except for, again, like shorts, t-shirt, socks, and runners. You're expected to bring that. Doesn't hurt to have a towel, okay? It doesn't hurt to have light snacks and a water bottle. So if you have questions, okay, again, none of this process is meant to be a mystery. So I will answer your questions to the best of my ability if you email me at firetest@ualberta.ca. Okay. For general information, you can go to the website and there's a couple PDF forms. One is a description of the test, which has how heavy everything is and the pass-fail marks. And then the other one is the medical clearance.